Get out.
That was the first thing Garrett Wilson said when a black girl walked into his dojo.
You even know what a black belt is, sweetheart? Or did you think this was the welfare office?
She stood still, quiet, hands folded in front of her.
I signed up for the open mat.
He laughed. The whole room laughed.
Look at
He
that
grabbed her
face.
shoulder and shoved her toward the door.
Total flop.
You're too small to fight! Way too weak! To everything! Run home!
She didn't run. She came back. And when she took off her jacket, his hands started shaking. Have you ever watched someone get humiliated in public and nobody stepped in? Man, they laughed way too soon. Let's get into it. Let me take you back to where this started. Not the dojo. Before that. Millfield, Ohio. A small Rust Belt town where the steel mills closed 20 years ago and nothing ever came to replace them. The kind of place where half the storefronts on Main Street are boarded up and the other half are barely hanging on. On the east side of town, tucked between a laundromat and a check-cashing place, there's a building with a faded sign out front. Millfield Community Recreation Center. Most people just call it the Rec Center. The city funds it, barely. The paint is peeling, the basketball hoops are bent. But every weekday afternoon, that building fills up with kids who have nowhere else to go. Free tutoring, free basketball, and one program that kept more kids off the streets than anything else in Millfield, a free self-defense class, open to anyone, run by volunteers. That's where Tanya Adams grew up. Not in a house, not in a school, in that rec center. Tanya was 18, just graduated high school, 5'2", 115 pounds, quiet as a church mouse. She worked part-time at a tire shop across town. Oil changes, tire rotations, the kind of work that left grease under her fingernails that never fully washed off. Every dollar went to her mother, who pulled double shifts at the hospital and still couldn't make rent some months. No father. He left when Tanya was 6. No explanation. Just an empty chair at the kitchen table one morning. Tanya didn't talk much, didn't complain, didn't ask for anything. But every single night, after her shift at the tire shop, she walked into a garage behind her grandmother's house. And she trained. Her grandmother was Colleen Brooks, 68 years old, bad knee, gray hair pulled tight in a bun. She looked like someone who baked cookies and watched game shows. She was not that person. Colleen Brooks had spent 22 years in the United States Army. She'd competed in military combatives at the international level. 512 wins. She'd trained soldiers who went on to train other soldiers. Her name was in Army records that most people in Millfield would never see and wouldn't believe if they did. But Colleen never talked about it. She came home, she kept quiet, she raised her granddaughter. And every night in that garage, she passed down everything she knew. Judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, leverage, timing, breathing, how to take a hit and stay standing, how to turn someone's size against them. 6 years, every single night. Tanya had earned her junior black belt in judo at a small dojo 2 states away. Nobody in Millfield knew. She never told anyone. She never competed publicly. She was terrified of being watched, of being judged, of standing in front of people who'd already decided she was nothing. Now, across town, the nice side, that's where Garrett Wilson built his empire. Elite Combat Academy, glass front, LED sign, branded merchandise in the lobby. Garrett was 34, 6'2", 210 pounds of loud confidence. Local news loved him. He sponsored youth tournaments. He shook hands with the mayor at charity events. Behind closed doors, Garrett was something else entirely. He bullied smaller students until they quit. He rigged exhibition brackets so his fighters always looked good. And he had a business plan that had nothing to do with martial arts. The rec center sat on a prime lot. Good location, cheap lease. If the free self-defense program died, if the city pulled funding, the building would lose its purpose. and Garrett had already called a real estate broker about taking over the lease. A second location for Elite Combat Academy, right in the heart of the East Side. All he needed was for that little program to disappear. So he filed a formal complaint with the city. Unqualified instructors, safety hazards, risk to minors. He wanted that rec center dead. He had no idea what was training in that garage. It happened on a Saturday morning. Elite Combat Academy was hosting an open mat session. The flyer said it clearly. All levels welcome, all ages, come train with the best. Garrett posted it on every telephone pole in Millfield. He even had his students hand them out at the grocery store. Tanya saw that flyer taped to the window of the tire shop where she worked. She read it 3 times. All levels welcome. She folded it into her back pocket and didn't say a word about it to anyone. Not Colleen, not her mother, not Nora. Saturday came. She put on a plain hoodie 2 sizes too big, pulled her hair back, walked across town alone. When she stepped through the front door of Elite Combat Academy, the room was full. 30 students on the mat, loud music, the smell of sweat and rubber. Garrett stood in the center, arms crossed, barking orders. He saw her immediately. A black girl, small, quiet, standing in his doorway like she'd wandered in by accident. "Somebody's lost," he said, loud enough for the whole room. Heads turned, smirks spread. Tanya held out the flyer. "It says all levels welcome. I'd like to sign up for the open mat." Garrett took the flyer from her hand, looked at it, then looked at her. He crumpled it slowly and dropped it on the floor. "Sweetheart, this isn't the place for you." He stepped closer, put his hand on her shoulder, not gentle, firm, pushed her back toward the door. "You're too small to fight. You understand that? Go home." Someone in the back laughed. Then another. Then phones came out. Someone was already recording. Tanya stared at the crumpled flyer on the floor. Her face burned. Her hands clenched around the strap of her bag. But she said nothing. She turned and walked out. Garrett watched her leave. He picked up the crumpled flyer and tossed it in the trash. Then he uploaded the clip himself that night. Caption: "When they think anyone can fight," with a laughing emoji. Tanya sat in the garage, alone. Colleen found her there, sat beside her, said nothing. Okay, real talk. If a grown man shoved you out the door on camera and the whole room laughed, what would you do? Seriously, would you report him? Cry about it? Let it go? Tell me in the comments, because what she did next, I promise you're not guessing it. That night, for the first time, Tanya looked at her grandmother and said 5 words. "Teach me everything. Not just defense, everything." That clip Garrett posted for laughs? It would be the last time he ever laughed at her. Garrett didn't stop at the clip. He watched the views climb. 200, 500, 1,000. And he liked what he saw. Not the numbers, the comments. People laughing. People agreeing with him. People typing things like, "She should have known better," and "Stick to what you're good at." It fed something in him. The next Monday, he sat in his office at Elite Combat Academy and typed a letter. Formal, professional, addressed to the Millfield City Council. Subject line: urgent safety concerns regarding the Community Recreation Center self-defense program. He wrote about unqualified instructors, liability risks, potential lawsuits. He used words like negligent and endangerment. He printed it on Elite Combat Academy letterhead and hand-delivered it to City Hall. Within 2 weeks, the city froze funding for the rec center's self-defense program, pending a full safety audit. Calvin Taylor, the city recreation director, had no choice. The complaint was on the record. If something happened and he'd ignored it, his career was over. The classes stopped, just like that. The one free program that kept kids off the East Side streets, gone. But Garrett had more moves. He had a friend on the city recreation board, a man named Douglas Pratt. They'd played golf together for years. Douglas was the one who pushed through a new rule. All volunteer instructors at city-funded facilities must hold a current nationally recognized certification. Not just experience, not just a military record, a specific paid certification that cost $1,500 and required a 3-month course. The rule was written for one person. Colleen Brooks applied to continue volunteering. She submitted her military service record. 22 years. International competition. 512 documented wins. Denied. She lacked current certification under the new municipal guidelines. Colleen sat at her kitchen table and read the rejection letter twice. She folded it neatly, put it back in the envelope, and set it on the counter. She didn't slam anything, didn't raise her voice. She just stood there for a long time, looking out the window at the garage where she'd trained Tanya for 6 years. Then she put on her shoes and walked out to the garage, alone, and she hit the heavy bag until her knuckles bled. The parents pulled their kids first, one by one. Mrs. Rivera took her twin boys out, said she couldn't risk them being in a program the city flagged as unsafe. Mr. Holloway pulled his daughter, said he didn't want trouble with the city. Within a month, the rec center's self-defense class went from 22 students to 3, then 2, then just Tanya. And technically, Tanya couldn't even train there anymore. Garrett watched it all from across town, and he was pleased. One Thursday night, after closing up Elite Combat Academy, he sat with his 3 senior students in the back office. Beers on the desk, feet up. He pulled up a real estate listing on his laptop and turned it around for them to see. "By summer," he said, tapping the screen, "that building is going to be my second location. Prime lot, cheap lease. The city's going to let it go once the programs die, and I'll be right there to pick it up." His students nodded. One of them raised his beer. "Smart move, boss." Garrett smiled. "Easiest deal I'll ever make." But he wasn't done with Tanya. He found her training footage. A friend of Tanya's, Nora Dawson, had posted a short clip on social media months ago. Just 15 seconds. Tanya drilling a hip throw on a practice dummy in the garage. It was shaky, dimly lit, nothing special. Garrett downloaded it. He spliced it next to footage of professional UFC fighters, elite athletes, world champions, sculpted bodies in high-definition arenas. And then he set the whole thing to circus music. Clown horns, slide whistles, cartoon sound effects every time Tanya moved. He posted it with the caption, "Local girl thinks she's a fighter, bless her heart." It got 3,000 views in 2 days. The comments were brutal. "Is this a joke? Someone save that poor bag from her. Girl can barely reach the dummy's chin." Tanya saw it on a Tuesday night. She was sitting on the floor of the garage, stretching before training. Nora had texted her the link with a string of angry emojis. Tanya opened it, watched it once, watched it twice, read the comments. She put her phone face down on the concrete floor. Then she cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears running down her face while she sat cross-legged in a cold garage, alone at 9 o'clock at night. Colleen found her like that. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't look at the phone. She just sat down on the concrete next to her granddaughter and stayed there. Quiet. Present. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. 10. Then Colleen stood up, slowly because of the bad knee. She picked up a training belt from the hook on the wall and tied it around her waist. "Get up," she said. Not harsh, not soft, just certain. "We train." Tanya wiped her face, stood up, tied her belt. They trained until midnight. Outside that garage, the city was turning against them. The rec center was dying. The free program was dead. Garrett's campaign had worked. Some people in Millfield supported him. "He's the expert," they said. "He knows what's safe and what isn't." Others sensed something was wrong but kept quiet. Nobody wanted to pick a fight with the man who owned the biggest dojo in town and had friends on the city board. Then something unexpected happened. A brown envelope appeared in Colleen's mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single typed letter. It explained that an anonymous donor was offering to fund a public exhibition match at the Millfield City Sports Hall. Open bracket. Any weight class, any rank, fully sanctioned, fully refereed, fully legal. The letter invited any martial artist in Millfield to register. Garrett heard about it the same day. He signed up within the hour. Easy PR. A chance to show the whole city what a real fighter looked like. He had no idea who sent that letter. It was Philip Moore, civil rights attorney, and he had his own reasons. They met in the garage on a Wednesday night. Tanya, Colleen, Nora, and a man none of them had met before, Philip Moore. Slim, glasses, quiet voice. He wore a plain gray suit and carried a leather briefcase that had seen better days. But when he spoke, every word landed with weight. "This isn't just a fight," Philip said. He laid a folder on the workbench next to a roll of athletic tape. "This is a legal record. I've arranged a notary and 3 independent witnesses. Everything that happens in that arena will be documented. Every word, every action. Admissible." Colleen studied him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I've watched men like Garrett Wilson take things from communities like yours for 15 years, and I'm tired of watching." Tanya sat on a stool in the corner, arms crossed. Quiet. Then she asked the only question that mattered. "What if I lose?" Colleen didn't hesitate. "You won't be fighting him. You'll be fighting every voice that ever told you, too small. And you already beat that voice every morning you walked into this garage." Tanya looked at her grandmother, looked at the cracked concrete floor where she'd cried 2 weeks ago, looked at her own hands, calloused, scarred, 18 years of never enough. She nodded once. The next morning, the exhibition bracket was posted publicly. Tanya Adams, open weight division. Garrett saw the name. He laughed so hard his coffee spilled. That was the last time he laughed. The Millfield City Sports Hall hadn't been this full since the high school basketball championship 6 years ago. 300 seats, every single one taken, people standing along the walls, people sitting on the floor in the aisles. Local news had 2 cameras set up near the judges' table. Someone from a regional sports blog was streaming live on their phone. The air smelled like sweat and popcorn and anticipation. Garrett Wilson arrived first. Of course he did. He came through the main entrance with 4 students behind him like an entourage. Matching black gis with the Elite Combat Academy logo embroidered in gold across the back. He high-fived people in the crowd, posed for a photo with a city councilman, waved at the news cameras like he was walking a red carpet. He looked like a man who had already won. 15 minutes later, a side door opened, quietly. Tanya Adams walked in with 3 people. Colleen Brooks, moving slow on her bad knee. Nora Dawson, phone already recording. And Philip Moore, carrying a clipboard and standing close to a woman at a folding table. The notary. Nobody cheered. A few people whispered. Most didn't even recognize her. Tanya wore a plain gray hoodie, zipped to her chin, black leggings, old sneakers, her hair pulled back tight. No logo, no entourage, no fanfare. She looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong building. Garrett spotted her from across the arena. He nudged one of his students and pointed. "That's her?" He didn't whisper. He wanted people to hear. "That's the girl from the video? Oh, this is going to be fun." More laughter, more phones. The referee called both fighters to the center of the mat. Garrett walked out with his chest forward, rolling his neck, bouncing on his toes. 210 pounds of showmanship. Tanya stepped onto the mat in her hoodie. The referee paused. "Ma'am, you'll need to remove your jacket for the match." The room went quiet. Not silent, just that half-quiet where everyone's still murmuring but starting to pay attention. Tanya reached for the zipper. She pulled it down slowly. She shrugged the hoodie off her shoulders and let it drop to the mat behind her. And the murmuring stopped. Underneath that oversized hoodie was a body that had trained every single night for 6 years. Lean, defined arms, shoulders that moved like rope pulled tight, knuckles thick with calluses, forearms that didn't belong on someone 5'2", and tied around her waist, a worn black belt, frayed at the edges, faded from years of sweat and use. but unmistakable. Garrett's smile disappeared. Not slowly, not gradually. It dropped off his face like someone had cut a wire. He extended his hand for the pre-match handshake. The cameras caught it. The live stream caught it. 300 people in that room caught it. His hand was shaking. The same hand that had shoved her out of his dojo 3 weeks ago, trembling in front of everyone. The referee blew the whistle. Round 1. Garrett charged. Straightforward. Fast. He was bigger, heavier, stronger. He expected to close the distance, grab her, and put her on the ground in 5 seconds. That was his whole plan. Overwhelm, overpower. Done. Tanya didn't move backward. She moved sideways. 1 step, just one. Garrett's momentum carried him forward, and Tanya's hip was already under his center of gravity. She grabbed his collar with her left hand, his sleeve with her right, dropped her hips low, and executed a textbook judo hip throw. 210 pounds of Garrett Wilson went airborne. The sound his body made when it hit the mat echoed off the walls. A deep, heavy slap that silenced the entire arena. Like a bag of concrete dropped from a truck. For 1 full second, nobody breathed. Then Garrett scrambled to his feet. His face was red, not from pain, from shock, from embarrassment. He looked at Tanya like he was seeing her for the first time. Round 2. He came in angry this time, reckless, swinging hard, trying to land something heavy to prove a point. Tanya took a hit. A glancing shot to her ribs. She absorbed it. Didn't buckle. Didn't flinch. Her eyes never left his chest, watching his weight shift, reading his balance like sheet music. Then she moved. A low sweep took his front leg out from under him. Before he hit the ground, she was already transitioning. She caught his right arm, locked her legs around it, arched her hips, and sank the arm bar deep. Garrett screamed. He tapped. Fast. Desperate. Slapping the mat 3 times. The referee stepped in. Tanya released immediately. Clean. Controlled. Professional. Garrett rolled to his knees, clutching his arm. He pointed at Tanya with his good hand. "She grabbed illegally. That was a foul. Check the tape." The referee reviewed. 2 judges confirmed. Clean technique. No violation. Round 3. Garrett was breathing hard now. His gi was soaked. His hair was matted to his forehead. He circled Tanya slowly, keeping distance. The confidence was gone. The showmanship was gone. What was left was a man who was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. Tanya watched him, patient, still, like Colleen had taught her. Let them come to you. Let them give you everything. Garrett lunged. Tanya feinted left. Garrett bit. His weight shifted forward, and Tanya dropped. She pulled guard, wrapped her legs around his neck and left arm, locked her ankles and squeezed. Triangle choke. Garrett's face went purple. His free hand clawed at her leg. His body thrashed. 5 seconds. The longest 5 seconds of his life. He tapped. The referee pulled them apart. Tanya stood up. Garrett stayed on the ground, gasping, staring at the ceiling. Silence. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Then the eruption. 300 people on their feet. Screaming. Stomping. The bleachers shaking so hard the news cameras vibrated. Elaine Foster, a mother who'd watched Garrett bully her son out of martial arts 2 years ago, was standing in the 3rd row, crying so hard she couldn't clap straight. Nora's phone captured everything, every angle, every second. Tanya stood in the center of the mat, breathing hard, belt crooked, hair loose. She didn't raise her fist, didn't scream, didn't celebrate. She just looked at Colleen. Colleen was sitting in a folding chair by the wall, bad knees stretched out, arms folded, and on her face, the smallest, quietest smile. That was enough. By midnight, the clip had 100,000 views. By morning, 500,000. By the end of the week, it crossed 4 million. Hashtag "too small to fight" was trending nationally. Every comment section, every share, every reaction, the same sentence over and over. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. But Garrett Wilson wasn't finished. 48 hours after the fight, Tanya Adams was served with a lawsuit, assault and battery, at what Garrett's attorney called a rigged and unlicensed event. The girl who won the fight was about to face something much harder than a man on a mat. The lawsuit landed like a second punch. Garrett's attorney, a man named Howard Bancroft, sharp suit, sharper reputation, filed the civil complaint in Millfield County Court on a Monday morning. 12 pages, every word calculated. The claims were simple: assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and a conspiracy charge, alleging that the exhibition event was unlicensed, improperly sanctioned, and deliberately organized to publicly humiliate a respected local business owner. The filing named 3 defendants: Tanya Adams, Colleen Brooks, and John Doe, anonymous event organizer. That was Philip Moore. They just didn't know his name yet. Garrett moved fast on the media side, too. Before the ink was dry on the lawsuit, he was sitting in a local news studio, soft lighting, sympathetic anchor. He wore a navy blue polo instead of his gi. No gold embroidery, no showmanship, just a man who looked tired and hurt. "I was set up," he said. His voice cracked on the words "set up." Just enough. Practiced. "I accepted an open invitation in good faith. I didn't know who was behind it. I didn't know they were bringing in a ringer to embarrass me in front of my community." He paused, looked down at his hands. "I'm a teacher. I've given 12 years of my life to this town, and now I'm being made into a villain because I lost a match that should never have happened." He never mentioned that he outweighed Tanya by 90 pounds. Never mentioned that the bracket was open weight, his choice. Never mentioned that he had signed the registration form himself, smiling, because he thought it would be easy. The interview aired at 6 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, the comment sections had flipped. That poor man. She clearly had professional training. He didn't stand a chance. Who set this up? This feels wrong. A teenage girl doesn't fight like that unless someone put her up to it. 18 years old, not a teenager. But the internet didn't care about details. The narrative turned overnight. The viral hero became the viral villain. Hashtag too small to fight. The hashtag that had celebrated Tanya 2 days ago was now being used against her. People added new words to it. Hashtag too small to fight fair. Hashtag set up Garrett. Hashtag justice for coach. Tanya watched it happen in real time, sitting on the floor of the garage with her phone in her hands. Every refresh brought new comments, new accusations, new strangers who had never met her, never seen her train, never spent a single night on that cold concrete floor, telling her who she was. Nora called her 6 times that night. Tanya didn't pick up. Then the tabloid piece dropped. A regional outlet, the kind that lived on outrage clicks and celebrity gossip, ran a feature with the headline, "Violent Teen or Martial Arts Prodigy? The Truth Behind the Millfield Fight Video." The article used a still frame from the fight where Tanya's face was mid-motion, teeth visible, eyes sharp. It looked aggressive. It was supposed to. The article questioned her background, her training, her connections. It implied, without evidence, that Tanya had been groomed for a publicity stunt by unnamed backers with an agenda against local businesses. Tanya's old high school received 3 phone calls the next day. Parents complaining, asking why the school had allowed a violent student to graduate without intervention. Her mother sat her down at the kitchen table that Wednesday night. Tanya could see it in her face, the exhaustion, the fear, the math she was doing in her head about lawyer fees they couldn't afford, and a fight that seemed to have no end. "Maybe we settle," her mother said quietly. "Maybe we just let it go." Tanya didn't answer. She stared at the table and pressed her thumbnail into the wood grain until it left a mark. In the garage, Colleen sat on a folding chair and read the lawsuit front to back, 3 times. She didn't speak for a long while. Then she set the papers down and said one sentence. "I've seen this playbook before." She had. 22 years in the Army. She'd watched careers destroyed by paperwork, reputations buried under procedure. She knew what a man with resources could do to a person without them, not with fists, but with forms. But Colleen also knew something Garrett didn't. Philip Moore had been waiting for this. The anonymous donor, the civil rights attorney, the man who had funded the exhibition, arranged the notary, placed 3 independent witnesses in the crowd, and documented every single second of that event with legal-grade precision. Philip didn't panic. He called Colleen on Thursday morning. His voice was the same as always, calm, measured, certain. "This is exactly what I expected him to do," Philip said, "and it's exactly what I prepared for." He took the case pro bono, no fees, no conditions. And then he went to work. He filed subpoenas, Garrett's gym contracts with the city, all email correspondence between Garrett Wilson and members of the Millfield Recreation Board, the original safety complaint that had shut down the rec center's self-defense program, financial records for Elite Combat Academy going back 3 years. The discovery process took 4 weeks. What it uncovered took 4 minutes to understand. The safety complaint, the one Garrett had filed to shut down the rec center, wasn't written by Garrett. The metadata on the document showed it was created on a computer registered to Douglas Pratt, Garrett's golf buddy, the same man who sat on the city recreation board, the same man who pushed through the certification rule that blocked Colleen. Douglas Pratt wrote the complaint. Garrett signed it. Together, they manufactured a safety crisis to kill a free program that competed with Garrett's paid business, so Garrett could take over the building. It wasn't just bullying, it was fraud, coordinated, documented, exposed. Philip assembled the evidence into a single filing, clean, airtight, devastating. He filed a countersuit on behalf of Tanya Adams. 3 counts: fraud, defamation, civil rights violations, specifically discriminatory interference with access to public recreational facilities. Tanya was 18. She didn't need a guardian to sign. She stood in Philip's small office on a Friday afternoon and put her name on the filing herself. Her hand was steady. Her face was calm. The same face Garrett had laughed at in his doorway. The countersuit included one final request: a public hearing before the Millfield City Council. Open to the public, open to cameras, open to everyone who had watched the viral video and thought they knew the whole story. They didn't. Not yet. But they were about to. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday evening, 6 o'clock, Millfield City Hall, 2nd floor, room 204. By 5:15, there were no seats left. People lined the hallway. People sat on the stairs. Someone propped the fire exit open, and people stood in the parking lot, watching the live stream on their phones. A local radio station carried it live. The regional news affiliate sent a crew with 2 cameras. Room 204 was built for city budget meetings and zoning disputes. It was not built for this. Calvin Taylor, the city recreation director, sat at the front table, flanked by 2 council members. A court reporter sat in the corner, fingers on the keys. Garrett Wilson sat on the left side of the room with Howard Bancroft, his attorney. He wore a charcoal suit, no gi, no gold logo. He looked serious, composed, ready. Tanya sat on the right side with Philip Moore and Colleen Brooks. She wore a white button-down shirt that was slightly too big for her, probably borrowed. Her hands were flat on the table. Still. Philip Moore stood first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture dramatically. He spoke the way he always spoke, like a man reading coordinates off a map. Precise, measured, impossible to misunderstand. On March 14th of this year, Philip began. A formal safety complaint was filed with the Millfield City Council regarding the Community Recreation Center's self-defense program. The complaint was signed by Garrett Wilson, owner of Elite Combat Academy. It alleged unqualified instruction, safety violations, and risk to minors. He placed a printed document on the table. This is that complaint. And this, he placed a second document beside it. This is the metadata analysis of the original file. The document was not created on any computer belonging to Garrett Wilson. It was created on a personal laptop registered to Douglas Pratt, member of the Millfield City Recreation Board. A murmur moved through the room like wind through grass. Philip didn't pause. Mr. Pratt drafted the complaint. Mr. Wilson signed it. Together, they fabricated a safety crisis to justify shutting down a free public program that competed with Mr. Wilson's paid business. He placed a third document on the table. Email correspondence. 14 messages between Garrett Wilson and Douglas Pratt spanning 2 months. The subject lines told the story by themselves. Rec Center timeline. Board vote strategy. Lease acquisition. Next steps. The goal, Philip said, was never safety. The goal was elimination of a competing program, followed by acquisition of the rec center property for commercial use. Howard Bancroft objected. Relevance, scope, hearsay. Calvin Taylor overruled each one. This was a public hearing, not a courtroom. The rules were different here. Philip called his first witness, Elaine Foster. She walked to the front of the room, slowly. She was a large woman with kind eyes and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, and spoke in a voice that barely carried past the second row. "My son trained at Elite Combat Academy for 8 months," she said. "He was 13, small for his age. Mr. Wilson called him the runt in front of the other students. Every class, every week. My son stopped eating breakfast because he didn't want to go. I pulled him out when he started having nightmares." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Nobody did anything. I complained. Nothing happened. Because Mr. Wilson sponsors the youth tournament. Because Mr. Wilson knows people." 2 more former students testified. A 19-year-old who described being forced to spar with fighters 30 pounds heavier as motivation. A mother who said her daughter quit after Garrett told her she fought like a girl, and not in a good way. Then Philip played the clip. Not the fight clip, the other one. The one Garrett had filmed himself at Elite Combat Academy and posted with a laughing emoji. The one where he put his hand on Tanya's shoulder and pushed her toward the door. "You're too small to fight, sweetheart." The video played on a screen at the front of the room. 300 people watched. The live stream audience, now over 40,000, watched. Garrett shifted in his seat. Then Philip called his final witness, Colleen Brooks. She walked to the front slowly, bad knee. No cane, she refused to use one. She sat down and placed a manila folder on the table in front of her. "Mrs. Brooks," Philip said, "can you describe your qualifications as a martial arts instructor?" Colleen opened the folder. 22 years, United States Army. Military combatives instructor, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, Fort Hood. International Military Combatives Competition. 512 wins, 31 losses. 2-time All-Army Champion. 1-time Inter-Service Champion. Recognized by the Army Combatives Hall of Fame. Inducted 2009. She laid each document on the table as she spoke. Certificates, competition records, letters of commendation. A photograph of a younger Colleen in Army fatigues, standing on a podium, gold medal around her neck. The room went dead silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the air conditioning humming in the ceiling. "I was denied volunteer instructor status," Colleen continued, "because I lacked current certification under new municipal guidelines. Guidelines that were proposed by Douglas Pratt. 4 days after Garrett Wilson asked him to find a way to shut our program down." She looked directly at Garrett. Not with anger, not with hatred, with the steady, patient gaze of a woman who had waited 6 decades to sit in a chair like this. "I was more qualified than Mr. Wilson before he ever put on a white belt, and he knew it." Howard Bancroft stood. "Mrs. Brooks, your military record, however impressive, does not constitute a recognized civilian certification. The municipal guidelines are clear." Colleen didn't blink. "The guidelines were written to exclude me specifically. The emails your client sent to Mr. Pratt prove it. Would you like me to read the dates?" Bancroft sat down. Calvin Taylor called Garrett Wilson to respond. Garrett stood, straightened his jacket, walked to the front of the room. He started strong, calm, rehearsed, professional, but Philip began his cross-examination. "Mr. Wilson, is your current instructor certification active?" Garrett paused. "It's in the process of renewal." "Is it active? Yes or no?" "It expired in January." A gasp from the back of the room. The man who had attacked Colleen for lacking certification was himself uncertified. Philip pressed, question after question. Garrett contradicted himself once on the timeline of the safety complaint, then again on whether he had communicated with Douglas Pratt before filing, then a third time on whether he had contacted a real estate broker about the rec center property. 3 contradictions, each one worse than the last. On the third, Garrett's composure cracked. He slammed his hand on the table and pointed at Calvin Taylor. "This is a setup. This whole hearing is a setup. You're trying to destroy me because I built something in this town, and he pointed at Tanya. "She's a nobody. She came from nothing, and you're choosing her over me?" The room erupted. Calvin Taylor called for order. It took 2 full minutes. When the room finally settled, Calvin Taylor read a prepared statement. Effective immediately, the Rec Center Self-Defense Program was reinstated, full funding restored. An independent review of all Recreation Board contracts would begin within 30 days. Douglas Pratt had already submitted his resignation from the board that morning. Tanya sat at her table, hands still flat, face still calm. But under the table, where no camera could see, Colleen reached over and placed her hand on top of her granddaughter's. Tanya's fingers curled around it. Tight. The civil case hadn't been decided yet. The judge hadn't ruled. But everyone in that room already knew how this story was going to end. The ruling came on a Tuesday. Millfield County Court. Judge Patricia Callahan. 16 pages, every word deliberate. Garrett Wilson's lawsuit against Tanya Adams, dismissed with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled, meaning it was over, permanently. The judge wrote that the exhibition match was fully sanctioned, properly refereed, and voluntarily entered by both parties. She noted that Garrett had signed his own registration form. She noted that the event was open weight, open rank, his choice. She noted that at no point during the match did Tanya Adams use excessive force, illegal technique, or unsportsmanlike conduct. Then she addressed the countersuit. Fraud, defamation, civil rights violations. All 3 counts, sustained. Garrett Wilson was ordered to pay compensatory damages. The amount wasn't enormous. This was a small-town civil case, not a federal trial. But the number didn't matter. What mattered was the next line. A mandatory public apology, court-ordered, to be published in the Millfield Gazette and read aloud at the next city council meeting. Garrett's attorney requested a private settlement. Judge Callahan denied it. Public harm requires public accountability. That was her phrase. It made the regional news that night. The dominoes fell fast after that. The Ohio State Athletic Commission launched an investigation into Elite Combat Academy's certification records. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Garrett's instructor certification had been expired for 11 months. Not since January, as he'd claimed at the hearing. Since the previous March. He had been operating an uncertified dojo for nearly a year, collecting fees from students whose parents trusted that gold logo on the wall. The commission revoked his license. Douglas Pratt, Garrett's ally on the Recreation Board, resigned the morning of the hearing. But that wasn't enough. The independent review Philip Moore had demanded uncovered 2 additional contracts between Pratt and businesses connected to Garrett. Conflict of interest. The city referred the matter to the State Ethics Commission. Elite Combat Academy closed its doors 4 months later. The glass front went dark. The LED sign went off. Someone taped a "For Lease" sign in the window. It stayed there for a long time. Garrett Wilson left Millfield before the end of the year. No interview, no statement, no goodbye. He just disappeared one morning, like Tanya's father had disappeared 12 years earlier. Except this time, Nobody wondered why. Tanya's story didn't stay in Millfield. The fight clip, the real one, not Garrett's edited version, had crossed 12 million views by the time the ruling came down. News outlets from coast to coast picked it up. Not the sports section, the front page. A story about a girl who was told she was too small, too black, too poor, too everything, and proved every single word wrong without raising her voice. She was invited to demonstrate at the National Martial Arts Expo in Columbus. She walked onto that stage in the same plain gi she'd worn in Millfield. No gold embroidery, no logo, just the worn black belt. The crowd gave her a standing ovation before she threw a single technique. Colleen was recognized that same month by a national veterans organization, Lifetime Achievement in Service and Mentorship. She accepted the award in a simple gray dress. She said 4 words into the microphone. For my granddaughter, always. The Millfield City Council passed a resolution the following spring, unanimously. Free self-defense classes would be offered at every community recreation center in the city, funded annually from the general budget. The program was named the Adams Brooks Community Defense Initiative. Tanya's mother was in the audience the night the resolution passed. She sat in the back row, still in her hospital scrubs, because she'd come straight from a 12-hour shift. When they read the name, Adams Brooks, she covered her mouth with both hands and cried without making a sound. Tanya received a full athletic scholarship that fall. She moved 2 hours away to train and study. But every Friday night, she drove back to Millfield, back to the rec center. She taught the evening self-defense class, the same one she'd grown up in. Free, open to anyone. The ceremony was small, a Saturday afternoon at the rec center, folding chairs, paper cups of lemonade. Colleen stood in front of Tanya and tied a new belt around her waist. Clean, black, unfrayed. Tanya leaned forward and whispered so only Colleen could hear. I fought for you too, Grandma. Colleen's eyes glistened. She blinked once, nodded once, said nothing. She didn't need to. So where are they now? Tanya Adams is 20 years old. She competes at the national level in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Her record is 38 wins, 4 losses. She maintains a 3.8 GPA. She still drives back to Millfield every Friday to teach the free self-defense class at the rec center. Last month, 26 students showed up. The room was so full they had to prop the back door open. She still doesn't talk much. She still doesn't celebrate after a win. She just looks for Colleen in the crowd, every single time. Colleen Brooks turned 70 this year. The bad knee finally got a replacement. She teaches a weekly self-defense class for veterans at the VFW Hall on Tuesdays. Attendance has tripled since it started. She still doesn't talk about her military record unless someone asks directly. And even then, she keeps it short. I served. I competed. I came home. That's it. But the garage is still there. The heavy bag still hangs from the rafter. And on nights when Tanya is home, the neighbors can still hear the sound of someone training past midnight. Philip Moore expanded his civil rights practice after the case. He took on 3 more cases involving discriminatory interference with public programs in small Ohio towns. He won all 3. He still doesn't charge families who can't afford his fees. Nora Dawson, the best friend with the phone, graduated from community college with a degree in communications. She now runs the social media accounts for the Adams Brooks Community Defense Initiative. The page has over 200,000 followers. Garrett Wilson moved to another state. He does not operate a dojo. He does not hold an active instructor certification. He has not given a public interview since leaving Millfield. A few months ago, someone spotted him working as a floor manager at a sporting goods store. He did not respond when they called his name. Douglas Pratt, the recreation board member who helped Garrett manufacture the safety complaint, was formally censured by the State Ethics Commission. He sold his house in Millfield and moved. Nobody keeps track of where he went. The Adams Brooks Community Defense Initiative now operates in 4 rec centers across Ohio. 3 other states have contacted Millfield about replicating the model. A documentary filmmaker spent 2 weeks in town last fall, interviewing everyone from Calvin Taylor to Elaine Foster to the woman who runs the laundromat next to the rec center. The documentary is called Too Small to Fight. It premiered at a regional film festival in October. It won the Audience Award. Hashtag Too Small to Fight has been used over 9 million times across social media. It stopped being about Tanya a long time ago. It belongs to every person who was ever looked at and dismissed. Every person who was told they were too small, too quiet, too poor, too dark, too different, too anything. It belongs to them now. I chose this one because I'm sick of watching big dudes mistake small for weak. Tanya trained on cold concrete for 6 years, while that man sold trophies to himself. She didn't need his gym. She needed him to find out. And he found out. If you've ever been told you're too small, too young, too weak, or too anything to do what you were born to do, drop your story in the comments. Not for me. For the next person who's going to scroll down and read it at 2 in the morning when they need it most. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Not tomorrow, today. And if this is your first time here, subscribe. Because stories like Tanya's don't get told on the evening news. They get told here, by us, for each other. One last thing. Go back and watch the moment she takes off that jacket. Watch Garrett's hand. You'll catch something you missed the first time. Sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest fight. And sometimes, that's exactly enough.